Greetings, everyone. Glad to have you with us. And we've already been chatting, but I wanted to have a new start to our conversation. And we're here today to hear from Beth Camp, and she will share her latest book and her writing history with us. And then we'll be opening for sort of a Q&A. There she is. She's got it up. And Beth, did you have any screen shares you wanted to do today? Or are we just going to hoof it?
Any what?
Screen shares, where you put, okay, don't worry about that.
I think I'm kind of like Thomas, that might be, I'm just glad that the photo and the mute and all that, it's working.
And that will, whatever you need to do, we'll try it and we'll make it work, okay?
Sure.
Well, Beth Camp has been, I won't say around forever, because that's not nice to say to anybody, but
true.
Certainly since the beginning of the Guild 20 years ago, I think. And she's been largely with Spokane Authors and Self-Publishers, I believe. And she's a very strong supporter of all things indie writer, and we're happy to have her with us today. Beth, I wanted to start off. I've been reading your recent book, by the way, and I'm really liking it. And I haven't finished it because I didn't want to accidentally give away the ending.
Good.
But first, give us a little bit of an overview of your writing history when you started and what type of book you started writing first.
Sure, happy to do so. The easiest way to start is, of course, at the beginning. And what I'd like to say is my mother was a Hollywood starlet. And so we moved often.
Wow.
And I spent as much time in foster homes as I did in hotels. And things did not progress well. But I can say writing saved my life. Writing helped me transform to be the person I am today. And how it happened is, how do I say this? My mother was not only very beautiful, she was an alcoholic. And all the trauma and drama that goes along with that was part of my everyday life. So I started writing short stories and poetry when I was 15, 16, 17. And there was one poem that began, "There's no such thing as a future, whether good or bad. There's only the past taunting you with things you've never had." And my aunt, I'm sorry, it's gritty. So my aunt came for a visit down to Phoenix, where we were living at that time. I can say I grew up on the West Coast because, anyway, so she came down and she saw that poem and she said to me, "How would you like to come and live with me and go to college?" And I said, "Yes." Yes, please. And it was as if my world was transformed 1,000%. I can never understate how grateful. Even after all these years, I get a little teary when I think about it. But I was now in a world where they had libraries, books, time to study, space to study. And I just fell in love with books and reading and all the stuff that goes along with it. So if I skip ahead, I could say that my writing life started then, but I always wanted to write. But you got to put bread on the table somehow. And so most of my work life, first as in banking in San Francisco, I worked full time and went to school at night. And I did that for a number of years, and I kept getting my credits up and getting my credits up. Did I have time for writing stories? Not working full time and going to school as much as I could, because my goal was to get my master's degree. So that persevered for the next so many years. And then when I got married, I discovered an external graduate degree. So you write to them and you send them all your credits, the State University of New York, and they evaluate your transcripts and they write back and tell you how many more you need. So I wrote to them and they wrote back and they said, you have achieved your goals. You have earned your degree. Just like that. I always felt like I got a mail order, you know? But so then what happened next is my husband and I were discussing, and I said, look, I don't know how to say it any other way. I've always wanted to be a teacher. And he said, well, let's go to graduate school for you. And so we moved to Oregon, and I began at the University of Oregon and worked full time and completed my degree. And then I applied for work at Lynn Benton Community College in Oregon, which is Albany, Corvallis area. And there were, I think, 300 applicants. And I was one of the finalists, and they hired me. Another life-changing event. So for the next 26 years, I taught English, some literature, Latin American literature is my favorite, and humanities, because nobody else wanted to teach that one. It was too hard. It covered all of human culture from prehistory all the way to today. I don't know, 3 terms sounded like fun to me. So I did that for a while. And then it was starting to get close to retirement time, and I wasn't ready. So we applied, and I thought I'd go on sabbatical and kind of, if I could visit some of these countries I've been teaching about, wouldn't that be fun? So my husband, being an independent traveler and loving travel, I talked to my boss, and he said, nah, they'll never approve it. And I said inside, well, let's see. So I wrote an 18-page single-spaced document listing all the things that I was going to do in 6 countries. And the board went, approved.
Wow.
Wow. For 6 months, we traveled independently, starting in Egypt, Israel, 1 month in each country, traveling, train, bus, whatever, staying in hostels, whatever, eating, whatever. And I want you to know I have eaten crickets in Egypt. And at Saqqara, I got to go underneath one of those big old pyramids, which is unforgettable. Okay. But anyway, Egypt, Israel, Turkey, Italy. Munch. France and England. Okay, but I still got to go to Stonehenge. Okay. So all of that brings me close to retirement. When I got back from this sabbatical, which was 6 months of absolute freedom to be immersed in world culture, it was wonderful to be home, but wonderful to have that experience, right? So my colleagues said, Beth, we're so glad you're back. We know how much you like to work, because I do. So he said, look at what we've saved for you. And they pulled out a pile, I kid you not, a stack of folders about a foot high. And I looked at them and I smiled. And I said, oh, thank you. And I went home and I said, honey, it's time to retire. And that's what I did. I retired. But I knew then that I wanted to write. Now was my chance at retirement. So I retired at 64. And I thought, well, I'm sorry if this is too long. Just shut me up anytime. So I said, I should prepare myself for writing, because I had been dabbling with this story for a long time. Just a couple of scenes here, a couple of scenes there, you know. So I took a writing class at the college, and the instructor on the very first day stood up and said, you can work on anything you want. This class is for you. I want to support your writing in whatever direction you want to go, except no violence. And I sat there and I said, oh, what am I going to write? Yuck. So I said, well, bleep, I might as well write about mermaids. And that led to my first book, which is very short, but it's a selection of, it's called The Mermaid Quilt and Other Tales. And not all of them are happy tales, because, of course, what did the mermaid eat? And I'll leave it at that. Okay. Well, there was a reason she sang those ships down to the bottom of the sea. She was hungry. What can I say? Okay. When we were traveling, there was one book that came along later that I wanted to tell you about. When we were in Paris, we got to go to the Museum de Cluny, and there they have those very gorgeous, exquisite lion and the unicorn tapestries. Have you heard of them? Jennifer Chiaverini wrote a book about them. Well, my favorite writing question is what if? And so this book came out of that experience, the seventh tapestry. What if there were a seventh tapestry? And the answer is the seventh tapestry looks at the possibility that King James at that time ordered tapestries. They were kept on the castle walls to keep people warm. And he loved unicorns. So he had a lot of them. Why wouldn't he order another one when he was getting married to the beautiful princess from France, who sadly was called the Summer Queen because she was not well? They were married, and she died within 3 months of returning back to England, or Scotland, I should say. Pardon me. Anyway, all of that comes from our visit to Stirling Castle. You know, one of the big advantages to being a writer and loving to travel, if you set your book in a weird place, you get to go visit. So we spent about a month in Scotland doing research, and that was a blast. But the biggest incentive and the biggest, I'm almost done with the summary, sorry. The biggest series that I did is because of my love of world culture and such, and Scotland in particular. Even though I'm not connected family-wise, I took in college very early a class called The Economic History of Great Britain. Now, isn't that a title to put you to sleep? It was fascinating. The first day of class, the teacher looks around. There are about 60, 65, 70 people in the class, all boys, all young men, and me. And he zeroed in on me. This is 1962-ish. He zeroed in on me and he said, "Why are you here, taking the place of a man who needs to support his family?" So I'm just grateful for that experience, because I just was very quiet and said, "I'll be good." And I did not drop the class because I was interested in, believe it or not, the economic history of Great Britain, because it was about the clearances, those rural farm workers who, when the Industrial Revolution came along, they got kicked off their land. The landowners wanted to make more money. And so these regular working people, they got kicked off. Some were actually transported to Australia. And so that began my fascination with the McDonald's. The McDonald family emerged in my first book called Standing Stones, and recounts what happened when this family was evicted and the troubles they faced, which led to the second book, nice and thick, right? Which regaled the tale of the part of the McDonald family that went to Australia, transported, and the famous Lady Franklin, who was the governor's wife and a little before her time was a bit of a radical feminist in the 1840s. And the third book, oh, wait, I held up Rivers. I meant to hold up. This is the Australian one. Sorry. This is the Canadian one, because one, based on real history, there was a young woman who escaped from Scotland. Her family was impoverished, and she joined up the Hudson's Bay Company disguised as a young boy. It happened. She was not discovered until months and months and months later. She worked as a man. She served in a remote outpost, and sadly she got sick. And the doctor came and investigated, and she was pregnant. So her story did not end well, all true, which led to, what can I say, the fourth book in the series, Back to Scotland, at reader's request. So what I want to say, the underlying theme of all my books is no matter what you face as an individual, a family, friends, obstacles occur, challenges happen, and somehow we must find the courage to overcome them. And I take that from my life, and I take that from my writing, and hope that my stories inspire others. Now, back to Mothers Don't Die, which I'm thinking Linda wants me to return to, right? Okay. The setting for Mothers Don't Die is in Seattle. And if you read it, you'll notice the setting is a duplex. I lived in that duplex. I walked to school from that duplex. And what happened in that duplex is horrific. Worse in my book than in real life. But this is the only psychological thriller I've written. The book that I'm currently working on right now is part of it's half written. So you do know it's National Novel Writing Month. Anybody take on writing challenges? Yay. Well, I did my 600 words today. I'm only going for 400 words a day. You set your own goals. It's okay. But my story is part of a doggone mystery series. It's called Unlimited Pursuit. And it's the story of a woman police officer who goes on the run. And that's what I want to say is it could be a cozy mystery if I chose to tell it that way, but everything about my life experience and what interests me about what challenges people face push me to the gritty side, sometimes the dark side, but not as dark as this one. Okay. Questions?
Well, thank you. I appreciate all that, Beth. It's it's wonderful. The only book I think that we have on our shelves for Beth right now is this one. And it is available. Goodness sakes, you're able to sell your books with a very low price. Is that because you don't want to make a profit, or
Well, I think inflation has pushed the prices of books up, but what I try to do is take the print cost, the mailing cost for me when I order like 20 books at a time, add that up, add $3. That's the price. That's good enough. I mean, at my age, older than dirt, at my age, I don't really care so much about profitability as about connecting with readers and hoping they enjoy my stories.
I hear you. I hear you. Patrick, you wanted to say something or ask a question?
Did I? I didn't raise my hand or anything, but you mentioned that you are writing scene by scene in your current novel. Is that correct?
Yes, somewhat.
Does that mean you're not an outliner, or you are typically, but not in this case?
Okay. That's a tough question to answer. Each of us has our own personality as we approach how we write a story. And I will tell you, I'm not an outliner. I struggle to be an outliner. What I am is a pantser. That's by the seat of my pants. And so I will jump in with the concept. I'll start with a paragraph here or there. One scene will just take off running and I run with it. I can type pretty darn good. And so gradually the story unfolds. And I use a technique called scaffolding. Have you heard of that?
No.
And okay, think of scaffolding. Scaffolding is like when you build a house, you build the scaffolding to show where the house will be and all the beams go up. So what I do is I start throwing scenes at a scaffold and building the scaffold at the same time that I'm writing the scenes. And I may have a separate file for character backstory. And I have another file for research. And I just write. As the story unfolds, new questions emerge for me. And then I just keep writing until the story is done. A few times I've changed names of the main character halfway through, but I can go change that. It's search and replace, right? You can catch nearly all of them that way. Nearly. Um, so I guess that's my answer to your question is the story unfolds, and sometimes I think as writers, it would be nice if we could just simply outline, but the creative process is not always neat and tidy. And so sometimes our dreams point us in directions that we want to go, and suddenly here's a whole new avenue. In Mothers Don't Die, I don't want to give anything away, so I won't. But I guess that's what what I would say is sometimes the story develops in a way that we, the writer, don't like. So just fix it. That's all.
Well, as a short follow-up to that, since
Yeah.
that's a murder mystery, or at least it's a missing person mystery, I was researching how to write a mystery a couple of years ago, and it said start with the solution and in the writer's head, and then work back and tell your story. Did you find that useful or no?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just a little too much structure for me. I would rather write and write and write and write around in circles until I find the direction my characters want to go. And it doesn't matter as I think about my books, they're mostly about female characters, but some of them have male characters. I don't really see a psychic difference between male and female other than behavior, maybe, thought processes, maybe, physical descriptions and emotional experiences that shape who that character is and how they develop and what challenges they face. But I don't feel that understanding the male psyche is invisible to me. But I do feel more comfortable writing from the female point of view. And I would say that in mapping out a book, if you're starting as a free-flowing writer like I do, I have a concept, I have a list of characters, I have blurbs for each section. So I divide it into 3 sections. So it begins to develop, the more story is there, the more it begins to develop more fully. So for the current book that I'm working on, I divide it into sections. I have maybe a good 80% of section 1 done. And what is happening in the section 1 will influence what happens in section 2, but I have a keyword outline, not a strict outline, a kind of a working draft outline. Does that help?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment.
Is it my turn?
Well, yeah. Hmm?
Okay. While you're writing, do you know how the mystery's going to turn out?
Sometimes
Okay.
I have hopes, but my characters have their own personalities and their own decisions to make. And so if I put them in convoluted situations, what they end up doing might surprise me. And so I say, what is true to this time, this person, this person's desires and motivations? What do they want to achieve? And what's in the way? And how serious is it in the way? For example, in Mothers Don't Die, Mothers Don't Die, yes. Here is this sweet family, a father, a wife, husband, wife, and a little girl. And while they're on their camping trip celebrating, exploring the wilderness of Eastern Washington, they go for a little hike before supper and they discover a dead body. And so the husband says, I have to get help. No, you cannot come with me. You need to stay in the tent. I will be back as soon as I can. We don't know what's out there. Our daughter is tired. Just stay in the tent. You'll be fine. Now, does that sound like a recipe for disaster?
Mhm.
Yes, and it was. It was because the killer's still there and he picks them up and takes them off. And so when the husband comes back with the cops, his family is gone. And the whole story then devolves around how does this woman survive being kidnapped and with her daughter and the rest of it. So, in answer to your question, did I know how the story would end when I began? And the answer is no. I just had the beginnings of the story and developed it as best I could.
Oh,
And it was
Beth,
fun.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know he was going to go for help and come back. And no, I did because I read the description of the book. That much was there.
Yeah.
Give you a bad time for giving something away, but no,
Yeah.
I'm telling you. And Beth, your scene writing is just remarkable. I mean, you write with a very straightforward, easy flowing manner. Okay, your sentences, everything you do, there's no fancy pants stuff about it at all. It's a good, solid writing, good, solid story. And I have to tell you that I was in the car with this family. I got out at the campsite with this family. I walked with them over towards the river. I mean, this was amazing. I saw the flowers growing in the field that you were describing. You did such an excellent job with the scenes. Is that something that you focus on a lot, or does that just come naturally to you?
I don't know. I did teach English for 26 years,
Mhm.
so at the community college level. So writing is just pretty natural to me. I just feels like something I do, and I love to write. And I'm glad to hear that you connected so well with my storytelling. Um, I just write what I feel and see as in my imagination. And I appreciate your feedback. It's
It's
good to know what captured you.
pretty solid. It's pretty solid. I know that some people struggle with themes. Some people struggle with dialogue. Writers, I should say, not
Mhm.
readers, but they will struggle with different facets, character building. Maybe their characters aren't well developed, or, you know, so there's all these different pieces to the writing of a good,
Mhm, mhm.
solid story like this. And it just seemed like, I mean, all of your areas were strong, but I was just impressed by the scene building because I don't always see that in everything.
Mhm, mhm. Interesting. Hmm. Hmm.
Well, you don't have to have a, I just thought you may feel that it was something you cared more about or something, but this is quite a family. I mean, the daughter is very believable. The mother, you know, mother, it's great. I got to tell you, people, you got to read the book.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And I would just say what I enjoy mostly is putting my characters in a difficult situation and then seeing if they can work their way out of it. But in reality, how do we bring each scene to life is by being in the moment with them. And that's what I try to do. Um, I would say uh, the reason that my historical fiction took so much of my time is that I didn't tell you what happened with Mothers Don't Die before I became a self-published writer. I sent it off to New York and they said, "What? No husband's going to leave his family behind in a campsite?
Oh,
Forget about it." So I put it in a drawer until very recently. So it's the first book I wrote. Um, and I did dust it off in this last year because I'm older than average and I wanted to um, finish if I could, and I self-publish. So I decide when it's done.
So
And I
having,
tried to address some of the questions that this agent in New York, who was, I respect immensely even today, of his doubting of the husband's motivation in leaving this family behind. And I
I
hope
have
I
to
addressed
say,
that.
I have to say though, it fit his character. In the car, when he was talking and stuff, he was very, his personality was sort of, I mean, what I want to say, floaty, for want of a different, you were kind of going, God, I couldn't tell if he was very affectionate to his family or not. And so when he did this, it felt like it was okay for this kind of a character to have made that decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that didn't, it didn't bother me like it may have bothered them. But anyway, Thomas, you had your finger up earlier when we were jabbering.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did I miss something? I thought you said that the scene starts in Seattle and you knew the family. Is that right?
No.
Did I
For
get-
this particular book you're talking about?
Well, I thought it was, but maybe I.
Not the family. Beth lived in the same building that she has placed the family in.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was no family. You created the family.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because the way my old brain is working is I thought that you actually knew some people and then you got to writing and you went off into the fictional side of it.
No. I just used the setting, just the setting, and let's not complain about old brains, because we all got them.
Chris is up
Well,
here.
and
What? I don't.
in
Joanne,
2 weeks, I'll be 80.
Joanne, you got-
Yes, I have a question for you,
Sure.
Beth. Do you have a favorite author, and where do you go for inspiration?
That's a really good question. And the reason I say that's a really good question is that gives my old brain time to catch up. And the answer is, I used to have a lot of favorite authors, but I don't anymore. So if you were to ask me my favorite author, I would list off the classics like Hemingway. And he's not very nice to women. Sorry. And I like Frank Zafiro. He's a local author that we all admire, and I like his work very, very much. And I read a tremendous amount. I'd say I go through maybe 2 books a week, but it's just in one eye and out the other. It goes really fast. I don't have any favorite authors right now, but I do enjoy romantic suspense. And I read as much as I can, and for relaxation mostly. When I'm writing, I'm not thinking about particular authors or trying to emulate anyone. I'm just immersed in my own stories. And I think that if I were to say anything, it would be that my stories are hopefully character driven, that they face nearly insurmountable obstacles and yet are successful. Because honestly, given today, the challenges that face us all, we need stories where people are successful in killing their own dragons, for want of a better word, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah.
Point. How about you, Chris, as a mystery writer? Do you have any comments or questions for Beth?
No, but I've enjoyed hearing about your process.
Yeah.
Well, I think Joan has a comment in a minute, but I'd like to respond to Chris's comment about my process. And the process is basically wake up in the morning. I get up very early and I spend about 3 hours just hammering the old keyboard. And sometimes I go online, like right now I'm working on a police procedural type where a police officer, female, is on the run from corruption in the Seattle Police Department. And so I'm doing research at the same time as I'm fleshing out the outline and writing scenes. And I do that. Usually I can stand to do it for about an hour and a half, and then that's about all I can do if that's a writing process. At a certain point, right now I only have about 20,000 words, but my goal is 60. And is anyone doing, somebody raised their hand, who is doing National Novel Writing Month? Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, but Joan, you had a question.
Actually, I have a couple questions. I was wondering about the price of your book because I think you have to give bookstores or publishers at least, 50 or 60% discount. How do you get around that?
Just, I work with Linda Bond, and she tells me what she needs, and she gets 40%, and my printing costs take up about 30% or 40%, and then the 20% comes to me.
Who's printing them for you?
Can I say?
Is it Gray Dog? Are you getting it done locally? No.
Mm-mm. I order online from that company, which shall remain unnamed.
The big A.
What can I say?
No, that's okay. I do want to explain to folks that it's okay to be published on Amazon and have your books on Amazon. Just that when you go into the store and want them to carry the books to promote, to, like a lot of people used to come to signings and they would give out, Patrick, I think we're getting feedback, but they would give out bookmarks with Amazon all over them, and we just said we're not going to give those out. We can't, because we don't advertise our competitors. We're sorry. It's like Sears advertising pennies, and no, but it's not an issue on our things. We know that most of the writers in Spokane that participate in the guild and staff and all that, they're all self-published, and most of them have been able to reach a huge market on Amazon. So, we understand that.
And Joan, you had another question?
Yeah, I have another question. I was wondering what your editing process is because you were an English teacher. Do you edit yourself, or do you have beta readers or critique groups and stuff? I think I was in a critique group with you once.
Yes, we were a while ago. I haven't, basically, when we travel, it's harder for me to do online work with groups. So basically, I do my first rough draft. I do my first editing myself. I did teach grammar and English at the college level for 26 years. So I do have some skills. But that's not the same thing as having all the skills. So having beta readers, and I do have a small group that I will send my rough drafts to and get their feedback from, and participating in online groups like the Internet Writing Workshop is one that has been of great benefit, where you send in a chapter or two and you respond to other people's works and they give you feedback, and then you go on from there. But I don't know. I'm not yet at that stage, so I don't know what I'm going to do by the time I get to the stage with the current project.
Is that the actual name of that organization?
Yes, the Internet Writing Workshop. And they give wonderful feedback. But again, you post a chapter and you might need to read like 3 or 4 other chapters written by other folks to fairly respond. So if I submit a chapter and I get 10 responses, I feel kind of obligated to give 10 responses back to their work. And so it's kind of, it can be a lot of work.
So what kind of writing do they, is it mysteries or is it certain genre? It's anything.
Yeah.
Like young adults and everything.
Yes.
Science fiction. Wow.
And if you go to their website, the Internet Writing Workshop, you'll find I think segments for different kinds of writers, fiction, nonfiction, and there may even be other subgroups that I'm just not that familiar with since I haven't worked with them for a while. But I really recommend them for fun.
Chris, you
I do
unmuted?
have a- Yes, Beth, have you made any of your books into audiobooks?
Just this one.
And if not, have you considered?
Yeah. And do you know that the Spokane Public Library has a recording studio specifically for authors? That is a wonderful resource, but you have to go down there to use it, downtown to use it. But I've been thinking of doing that because audiobooks, people like them. And the other problem is when you work with a person you don't know to read your book, their interpretation, their inflections, their tone may be a little shy of what you envision how the story should unfold when it's in a spoken format. So I might consider checking out and trying the resources at the Spokane Public Library downtown. It's at no cost. Since I'm a frugal indie writer, that appeals to me. But the reality is, I'm older than average, so it may not happen. And that's okay. You know, that's what it is. I respect Daryl Cuyo for what he did in my book, The Standing Stones, but I felt it, if I had done it, it would have turned out differently. Does that help?
Patrick,
I'm Beth, I'm glad you took the comment by the New York agent regarding your recent book and then at least adjusted for it, because my take on any feedback is it's really an opportunity to improve a particular scene or character or something. It isn't necessarily a don't do this, it's not going to work. But that said, you do a lot of your own editing, but I'm assuming a little more structural editing, story editing, or even style editing is a little different. Have you ever received key piece of feedback that adjusted how you write?
That's a really interesting question. And I'd have to say, how I would answer is, I'm married to a brilliant man and he reads my stuff. And he is not a gentle critiquer. So I would say, yes, I have. And I have developed a pretty darn thick skin because I'm still writing. And I think for me, there are so many levels of editing that go on. Generally, it takes me about 3 years to write a book. And the first year is just blah, 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 the story. And then the next 2 years are editing and editing and editing. And so I don't take the process of editing lightly. I do have beta readers, and I do have my husband, and he's good. So I don't feel that the end product is something that I am either willing or eager to hire an outside editor for, as some people do. Yeah. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. Joanna, did you have a question? Oh, no, it wasn't you. Okay. Joan, you had another question.
I thought you had also a book of poetry. Do you? Do you have a book of poetry?
Do I? Well, there's some poetry in this one. And I honestly, at this moment, I don't think so. I'm looking. No, I don't think I have ever published a whole book of poetry except for
poetry during the pandemic or something.
Oh, yeah, that one. Okay, I forgot about it.
Yeah.
Ah. Oh, you guys are so patient.
Just admiring your cupboard doors. That's, nice wood paneling and
Well, I don't have it. I should have it, but I don't have it. So I can only show you this.
South American journey.
Yeah, basically self-published. It's Alan and I went, he loves to travel. So we went for 6 months in South America. And this is a collection of just notes and poetry of where we went and what we did. It was just for fun. There's that one. Then you know about this, Celebrating Spokane Authors, which is a collection by the Spokane authors and self-publishers, and that has poetry in it. And I do have that other book, but this one was fun. This is really old. 2009, we went to Scotland to do research for Standing Stones. And so this is just a kind of a picture book of things we got to see and, just like that. So I'm sorry I don't have the poetry book. I had even forgotten about it. And yes, poetry in a time of pandemic was a collection of poetry. And I can't even remember how long it was. But what I would tell you is, for all the years that I was working before I retired, poetry was my main way of expressing my creativity, I guess, for want of a better word, because it's something you could focus on. And you know about National Poetry Rating Month in April? The challenge, online challenge, you know about that? Oh, it's so fun. I love writing challenges. So what you do is you have to write a poem a day for a whole month. And they may give you a word for inspiration, but you don't have to write for that. I mean, you don't have to write to that prompt. Yeah. Yeah. National Poetry Writing Month. Yeah.
By the way, Beth, I have to tell you that I did probably, I don't know, 15 years ago or more. There was an author, she still teaches in university, I think, Kelly, either her first name is Kelly or last, but she did write a book about the tapestry. And I got the book,
Interesting.
it's called The Seventh Tap. I'm not sure what she called it. I've got it around here somewhere. I'll try to find.
Dig it out and send me the info on it. I'd love to see it.
Because I think you'd love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I do want to ask you if you have any comments or any suggestions and tips for writers who cannot travel all over the world. Some of us are stuck, are pretty much just here. So what should we go out and fabricate something, like figure out, let's see, what if I'm in Paris. That's what I am. How important do you think it is when you write that you have actually visited the location or the places that you're writing about?
Let's see, what I can only respond to that from my point of view. So every writer is different, and every writer has an inner strong emotional life that influences everything you write. And part of that is where you grew up, how you grew up, where you've gone, where you've traveled. And to break out of that, we might start by saying, do we argue with that old saying, write what you know? Is that your starting point? And I feel the answer is yes. For me, the writing is an excuse to travel, and I can't travel quite the same way as I used to. So I do use the internet. I'm writing a follow-up. The Seventh Tapestry is the first book. The second book that I have planned is The Lost Sarcophagus, which is set in Egypt. Yes, I have the privilege of having visited Egypt in 2004. That's a long time ago. So do I use YouTube videos? Yes. Street scenes in Cairo? Yes. YouTube videos. That's one of my primary sources. Do I do research and find books from the library and online, order books, even at bookstores, looking for used books on Egypt and how its history, its culture, the gods and goddesses that inspired the pyramids, all the history in the background that I need. I can fill in the stories about people, and I can remember some details of my visit there for a month, but I need that external research to validate the direction. And the other thing is when you're writing your stories, what are you writing about? What genre are you writing? Where is your setting? Are you using a setting that you have known and have experienced directly? If you do, then how do you expand your awareness of that setting? Not many of us know a serial killer. I'd say very few. But are there autobiographies and biographies about serial killers who give us glimpses into the workings of their inner mind? I'm a great believer in research. So that's another way to back your way into adding more depth to your storytelling. And if I were to add one more, it is journaling. That's separate from writing with a computer. Because when you write with a computer, I don't know how your typing skills are. I can type pretty darn fast. I mean, I did work my way through school, so I got that. But when you write in a journal, your ability to write slows down how fast your brain thinks. And so you're more reflective when you're journal writing. So even if all you do is write a list of questions, write a list of feedback and reactions for yourself about what you've seen or read. If you watch a movie and you particularly liked one character's personality, what was it that you liked about it? And scribble away in your journal. And you would be surprised as how that might spill over into your current storytelling. Because that's what we're about, is telling stories to people. And it might be interesting to look at your themes. What is your underlying theme? What is the quest that your characters are going on? Can you make a map, that great classic, intro, beginning, conclusion, that takes your reader on that journey of discovery? And what do you want your reader to retain, to remember always when you tell a story? Those are things that I think as creatives, we're constantly exploring how to tell our stories in new ways. There is no, for me anyway, there's no one way. There are many, many, many ways to dig into a story. I hope that helped.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that. We're pretty much at the end of our time, but does anyone have any last minute question or comment? Or I know Steve writes a lot of historical fiction and goes back to the Greeks and you're right, and the Egyptians. And so that's one place you can do a little research if you get to that area of the world. But any other thoughts before we close it up for today? Well, thank you so much for coming. And Beth, this was a wonderful presentation. I learned so much more about you today than I ever would have. Here's something else. I really appreciate your input. So thank you, and thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And we'll hopefully see you again in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Thank
Did
you.
a good job, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda, can I have a word with you after everybody's gone?
Certainly. Bye, all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Yeah, thanks. Same to you. Bye, Thomas. Bye, Joyce.
Bye-bye, dear.
And Mark.
So, I went to the meeting. I'm sorry I haven't been able to,
No,
connect with you
that's okay.
directly.
No,
Lots of medical stuff. I had a steroid shot in my hip on Monday, and
how are you
then
doing?
I'm doing okay. Actually, the steroid shot in the hip helped a lot. I'm able to walk upright now, and
Yeah.
so things are getting better. So, but
Well,
the meeting was
let me-
very
let
interesting,
me,
and I think you've got pretty much all the information from Eric. So,
stop the recording here.